Kids, some recent events have really sunk into me, and I wanted to talk about a subject that I think doesn't get spoken about enough. And I have this happen in my life often. People like to put me, particularly, in catch 22s. And I always find out, and I don't appreciate it. But the reason I'm speaking about catch 22s is this: there is a huge difference between having a mental illness or being crazy and being stupid. Just because you have a mental illness doesn't mean you're stupid. Just because you're crazy doesn't mean you're stupid. Or just because you're stupid doesn't mean you're crazy. They are two entirely different things. Now, a lot of times people make the mistake of mixing the two together. They think stupid people are crazy and they think crazy people are stupid. Not the case. Two totally different things. Now, I bring this up because we've had a couple of events, two events I read about recently that just really rocked me because, as many of you know, I used to work in the airline industry for a very long time. Now, I was diagnosed as manic depressive back when I was 17 years old. And back then, no one explained to me what that meant. No one really discussed the features of manic depressive, what to watch out for, what to do. They just handed you these drugs that made you feel like a zombie and sent you on your way. And when I turned 18, I stopped taking the drugs and I left home. Not by my own choice. I got tossed out. But I stopped taking the drugs because they made me feel like a zombie. I didn't feel anything. I was just a zombie. I was just this carcass that was alive that had no feelings. And if anybody knows anything about bipolar disorder, or what manic depressive became bipolar disorder, is that you're used to having a lot of feelings. So imagine going from a lot of feelings to no feelings at all. It was very horrible. It was like, why live? It made you want to just kill yourself. And that was, truly the case. I mean, I wanted to know why I bothered to live on these drugs. So I went out and decided that I was going to figure out what was wrong and then learn how to deal with it. So I did. I got close friends to kind of monitor me. I started monitoring myself, taking notes, all kinds of things for a long time, until I realized, how I worked, so that I could avoid or not get carried down the river. Like if you throw a leaf in a river, it just carries you down. Well, with mental illness, unless somebody tells you A, you have one, and B, what to look out for, or how to look out for it, you don't know. So you just get caught up, basically swept down the river without even realizing. And sadly, most people with mental illnesses are in that position still today. And it's just really sad. And they don't bother to take the time to try to fix it themselves because they don't really even know they're caught up in it. And even some people that are diagnosed just give up because they're medicated. And when you're medicated, you just really don't give a shit. I mean, frankly, they just turn you into a zombie. I'm medicated now, and I frankly don't give a shit for most things. I just kind of, whatever. But this thing that happened with Germanwings over in Europe, where this guy crashed the plane into the mountain because he was suffering from some kind of trauma, mental trauma, whether it was an ongoing mental illness or just a temporary psychosis or whatever it was. He decided to crash the plane very calmly into a mountain. And although they're suggesting it might be a breakup with his girlfriend or whatever, those, usually when people break up, they don't crash a plane into the side of a mountain and take 149 other people with them. It's just not normal. The other thing I read today, which has really got me thinking about this even more, it just kind of like my jaw dropped, was I think a couple of years ago there was a JetBlue captain that totally freaked out on his flight from New York to Las Vegas, and he went outside the cockpit and was running up and down the aisles screaming about jihad and religion and terrorism and all this kind of stuff, and just totally just lost it in a psychotic episode. And the passengers had to tackle him, and the co-pilot locked him out and landed the plane safely in Amarillo, Texas, and they took him away for medical care. Um, but he's now, 3 days after the crash of this A320 into a mountain, he's decided that he's going to sue JetBlue for allowing him to fly and not checking that he was okay, because it, quote, ruined his career and ruined his reputation. And I had to think for a second. My initial reaction was, are you kidding? What balls do you have to, to actually sue your employer who helped you as soon as they could? That just kind of struck me as, just typical of this country, lawsuits, 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 lawsuits about everything. So I was kind of like off-put by it, but then I thought about it for a second too, because it is the employer's responsibility, especially a pilot, to make sure that they're not drunk and they are ready to fly. And this guy had apparently missed his briefing, and he missed like everything before, and he was totally looked like crap when he got on the plane, and things didn't look right, supposedly. So, and everybody just brushed it off and let it go because they wanted to get the plane out on time. And working for an airline, I know how that is. And working for an airline with a mental illness for 17 and a half years, I worked for airlines with a mental illness, and a quite serious one, even more serious than I thought. Now, the thing is, with me personally, I didn't share my mental illness with my employer, but everyone around me, including other employees, if they were friends, I became friends with them. Anybody I became friends with or very strong acquaintances with, I would tell them, I have a manic depressive, so if you see anything weird, just let me know. I told relationships that. I told everyone that. I didn't hide it because I didn't know A, it was a problem, and B, that I'm supposed to be dysfunctional or anything like that. I just kind of went with it. So for several decades, I just focused on work. I was a total workaholic, absolute classic manic depressive, absolutely classic. I could be the biggest dream or your biggest nightmare. It all depended on how you rubbed me. And you could rub me wrong just one day and you could be gone, because I generally was a lot of times in like supervisory positions where I could just pop you out. And I would. But I didn't realize at the time that was wrong. That perhaps I needed to slow down. So, but I did a good job. I got lots of recognition. I got Employee of the Year. I was excellent at my job. I used to train people to do all the different jobs I learned to do. And I learned to do practically every job in the airport except fix the planes and fly the planes. So, but everything else, like ticket agent, baggage agent, cleaner, operations, all that kind of stuff, I did all those things. Weight and balance, everything. I mean, calculations and everything. Never had an accident or incident on my watch because I was so focused on my job. Now, later in life, I realized I started degrading, actually, to the point where I couldn't work anymore. And I got diagnosed not with manic depressive, which I found out, which I didn't know had become bipolar disorder. I mean, that's just how out of tune I was. I just didn't care. So I didn't know that they renamed my disease at some point. But I was having much stronger problems, and it was audio hallucinations, visual hallucinations, tactile hallucinations, and they were very disruptive. So I knew that I couldn't do a good job anymore because I couldn't concentrate long enough. I had moments of clarity, but I also had lots of voices in my head. Now, the voices in my head have been there since I was a kid, but I didn't realize that you weren't supposed to have voices in your head until I got re-diagnosed as an adult. Not as a 17-year-old that was scared to death and would say anything just to get away from you, because my parents were a nightmare, and I couldn't wait to get away. So I didn't really think about it because I didn't know any better. That's the thing about mental illness. If you have it, unless somebody tells you, you don't know, and then you don't know how to look for symptoms, you don't know how to look for problems, and you don't know how to cope with them. Now, it used to be that since I didn't know, I thought it was always okay to have 8 voices talking in your head at all times, just chattering away and arguing and debating and all that kind of stuff. Now, I realized that that's not okay, but it's disruptive. Now, I've seen ghosts since I was like 9, and spirits and all kinds of weird things. That was like totally normal to me. The first time it happened was when my great grandmother died, and she came and visited me the night she died. So that's always been kind of normal because she supposedly gave me that ability. Some people call it a gift, some people call it a curse, whatever. But that's been kind of like my life for, since I was 9. And I didn't think about it, and I tried to put it out of my mind and ignore it and just, don't do anything about it and don't discuss it because it would freak people out. And it does. It freaks people out. So I didn't really discuss it all the time, although I would occasionally have fun with people with this. Now, my father always treated me as a child like I was one step from being completely mentally retarded, dysfunctional. And he thought I was really, really, really stupid. And I am the dumbest ass in captivity. I'm not even trying to deny that. But he treated me like I was a moron, literally. And that I was incapable of actually thinking. And when they put me in the mental hospital at 17 because I was gay and they're going to fix that, that didn't work out for them. They did tests on me, all kinds of tests, and they found out that I wasn't as stupid as I've been told and as I've been treated since I was a kid. So then my father was pissed at me for pulling the wool over his eyes because I was playing stupid. And I looked at him and I said, well, the stupider I got, the less you expected of me, and then you weren't such an asshole. So was I really stupid? Or was I just, thinking it over and trying to survive in this nightmare of an existence that you brought to me since you bought me as a baby? Or actually before I was born. So he got really mad. He was really, really, really upset for a lot of years because he was a bullshitter himself, but I out-bullshitted him. So that bothered him. Now, when I started to totally unravel, and I unraveled late in my 40s, I had already been working since I was 10 because my father didn't think that I would be smart enough to ever go to college or have a decent job or anything, so he wanted to teach me a work ethic so I could get by. So he drilled in a work ethic by making me work since I was 10 years old. I mean, literally in jobs that paid with paychecks. So I got my Social Security number when I was like 10. to get my first paycheck. Um, so I've been paying into the system for 38 years. I mean, it wasn't like, I never worked. I worked a lot. I mean, I used to work 80, 90, 100, 120 hours a week. That's all I ever did was work. I would risk relationships for work. I would forego vacations and everything and just work, 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 work. Because as long as I was working, I was happy because I was doing what I want, my dream job. I was working at the airlines. And since I was 2, I loved anything airline. Anything airline. So I was working in my dream job. Around airplanes, smelling jet fuel and seeing passengers and catering and seats and the whole 9 yards, opening doors and, seeing evacuation slides and all that kind of stuff. So that was really neat for me. But I wasn't stupid. I was good at my job and I wasn't out of control. So, because I knew how to look for out of control, and when I got out of control, I taught myself over a course of years. I didn't do it at first. I wasn't really good at it at first. But over a course of years, I taught myself, like when I got really angry for no reason, just would snap, I would walk away and go find a place to just let that energy drain, because I knew it was just a chemical in my brain. It wasn't really a reason to be so angry, and that I didn't need to take things so personally or be so morally offended by whatever somebody said or did. So I learned, walk away and go find a quiet place until you can calm down. Because if I didn't, that's how people go postal. I learned that. Now, as an adult, as a middle-aged guy, a middle-aged man in his 40s, I was re-diagnosed after I was seen again because I had a complete breakdown. I mean, complete, absolute breakdown. I was put on medication. The medication did not sit well with me. I had horrible reactions. They put me on a different medication. Same thing. They had to keep changing it until they found something that didn't make me really sick or tried to kill me or make me panic or made me just sleep 24 hours a day. So I was in and out of mental hospitals and getting medication changes and trying to get things right. But I couldn't work anymore. I just couldn't function. I couldn't focus. All of these, I started having, besides the ghosts, I started having all these ridiculous hallucinations that didn't make any sense. Just blobs would appear out of nowhere, or something that looked like a balloon, or some kind of random object, like a desk would suddenly just appear in front of my face, and it would be like odd sized or odd shaped or something, and it just didn't make sense. And then why would it be there? So at first it was startling, but then I just started to realize, okay, I've got to separate. Now I've got even more to deal with. I've got to deal with being bipolar. I've got to deal with the paranormal stuff. I've got to deal with these new things that I'm seeing and hearing and feeling, which I didn't have to deal with before. And then I had to learn to deal with all that on medication. So I had, and when they put me on medication, my dreams were so much more vivid than they used to be. So I was living a whole nother life, or I live a whole nother life now when I sleep. So when I sleep, I have this whole other life. So I have these different, literally, like different lives. I have my sleep life, I have my paranormal life, I have my, what I call the crazy life, and I have my supposedly awake, regular life. So whatever regular is. So I guess, like the awake, quote, sane, even though I'm not sane by any stretch of the imagination. And sorry, I sometimes I get lost. I was, I'm so sorry this is happening. This gets so frustrating for me. This is why I have a problem. Um, but I was talking about my different realities. So I had to learn how to separate them out, and then I had to learn how to put markers down so that I knew where I was. And like I just stopped right now, it's because my mind will just suddenly go blank, or the voices will start talking to the point of being disruptive, or I'll see something or hear something or feel something and I've got to stop. But a lot of times my mind just goes blank now, and that never used to happen. I totally just blank out, and then then I come back. It's frightening, because I've also got on the phone sometimes, and then like discussing business on the phone, like whatever kind of business. I mean, like personal business, and I'll start babbling. Like I was on the phone one day, actually with Social Security, and I started talking to Social Security, this lady at Social Security, because I had a question, and she asked me my address, and I just started rambling. I started giving her addresses from like every house I'd lived at for the last 3 or 4 houses, and a couple different phone numbers and all kinds of things. And she was just sitting there like, oh my God, she was like in the Twilight Zone, because I just put her in the Twilight Zone. And then I caught myself talking, and I realized I wasn't making any sense. So I had to stop, and then my mind went blank, and then I had to apologize. I got silent. She asked me if I was there, and then I had to apologize. And then I had to I said, can we start over, please? I'm really sorry. And it was really embarrassing. And it is embarrassing when it happens. Like, I usually would have stopped this video and just started all over, because I had a blank moment. But I wanted to show you how that really works. It's crazy, literally crazy. So when we're talking about these like airplane crashes and this guy suing his employer and stuff, the thing is that there are a lot of high-functioning mentally ill people out there that are not stupid, that can do a great job and pass all kinds of tests and do all kinds of things. That doesn't mean they're not mentally ill. They are mentally ill. They're just not stupid. And then you have stupid people that can't pass all these tests and don't know their ass from a hot rock, but that doesn't mean they're mentally ill. And when people blur those lines, and they get blurred together, and they're kind of stuck together in society and with the mind without even thinking about it, you have to learn the difference between stupid and mentally ill. Now, a lot of people, like I've had therapists tell me, well, you seem to be articulate, and that's not normal for your diagnosis, but you're classically, besides that, you're classically your diagnosis. So what does that mean to me? That I am something, I'm not something, I'm kind of something. So anyway, my new diagnosis was schizoaffective disorder, because I have the effects of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, which schizoaffective disorder is basically when you have both, and you have symptoms of both. Now, just because you're schizophrenic doesn't mean that you're just totally wackadoodle. There's actually some things that are very positive about being schizo, but not always. And if you let it get carried away, or you have all these fears, and a lot of people are born and raised and trained by society to be scared of stuff. And fortunately, my parents thought I was stupid, and they just didn't give a shit enough to teach me to be scared about things. Like we weren't religious or anything, so we didn't learn how to fear, you know, ghosts or boogeymans or God or demons or whatever this, crap is. We didn't learn to fear that because we didn't discuss it. It just was never discussed. We just didn't. My parents both were both different kinds of Christians, and the reason we were never told or taught was because they couldn't agree on what kind of Christianity that we should learn. So they decided that we should learn on our own. And they just said, we're not going to do that. We're not doing church. We're not discussing anything. When the kids grow up, they can just make up their own mind. And that was the only nice thing they did. I mean, that was a gift, a blessing. They taught us how to, they said, basically, think on your own. Get a life. And, we'll give you the tools to try to survive. And in my case, they gave me the tools to have a work ethic and work hard because I was stupid. So they didn't, that was the best they could do for me. But they didn't teach me to fear anything. They just taught me that, you just keep working. You just keep working and working and working and working. And that's all I did. I've just been everybody's sugar daddy and paycheck since I was a kid. I didn't know any better. I just thought that's what I was put on this planet to do, was just work and pay for everybody else's stuff. And that's what I did for 40-something years. Yeah, seriously. So, like almost 40 years. I'm not kidding. But when like society is so shocked or nervous or paranoid about, like, oh my God, all these mentally ill people coming out and they're in important positions, of course they are. It's like there's like that gay football player. There's a news report today that this gay football player, the only gay football player in the NFL, talked to the press and said, guess what? I'm not the only gay football player in the NFL. No kidding. There are lots of them. I was a gay football player in high school, and they thought I was the only one when I came out. But I wasn't the only one. There were several other guys on the football team that were gay. It had nothing to do with playing football. It had nothing to do with being gay. It just happened to be that we were gay and we liked to play football. Or we were forced into it by our parents, or whatever the case may be. Expected to do that by society, whatever. That's what we did. And we made the best out of it, and we got on with things. Now, just because a pilot's mentally ill doesn't mean he's a bad pilot. It just means that when, like, the airlines used to have 3 and 4 people in the cockpit back in the day with the older generation of airplanes. And then, because they wanted to save money, they went to a 2-man crew, a 2-man cockpit on almost every plane that exists now. But sometimes somebody has to take a piss, or go to the bathroom, or get up and stretch their legs. So one guy would leave, and then leave another guy all alone. And that wasn't a big problem when you could just use a key or a code and get in the door, and the door wasn't reinforced. But after 9/11, they reinforced the doors and they reinforced the locking mechanisms so that you could exclude anybody from it, including a crew member. And they still didn't put into effect in most countries. They did in the States, but not in most countries, because there was already starting to be some, back in the 80s is when we started to see pilots committing suicide with their airplanes, with mentally ill people. And there were crashes, and then there were absolute, destructive crashes. In one case, a Japan Airlines plane, the other crew members had to fight off the crazy one who was trying to crash the plane, and they ended up crashing short of the runway, but the other crew was trying to fight the guy off. Now, with the 2-man crew, as we saw and we've seen this in other instances before with other airlines, they'll just shove the plane into the ground or put it into an uncontrolled, steep dive that you can't recover from, or they'll stall the plane, or they'll do whatever they can do. Now, if you only have one other guy in there or one other lady in there, let's say you have a female captain and you have a male co-pilot, and the male co-pilot's this big burly dude, and the lady pilot's like probably, in her early 50s, and she's a rather, she's not a huge buff lady. She's getting, she's a captain. She's going to get ready to retire in about, a decade or so. If that co-pilot snaps, what is she going to do? Really, think about it. What is she going to do? What can she do? I mean, besides shoot him, what could she do? And then if she shoots him, she risks damaging the airplane and causing more just as many problems as he's causing. So you have to think, okay, well, you can only save so much money cutting people out. Now their new solution is they're going to put a flight attendant in the cockpit with a pilot if the other pilot has to go to the bathroom or whatever. And I don't see how, in some cases, I mean, obviously if you're kind of physically evenly matched, I can see how you'd have half a chance. But even if the flight attendant won, how's the flight attendant going to fly the plane? I mean, you know what I mean? Think about it. So, I mean, this is not the movie Airport, with the 747 and, the flight attendant, driving the 747 across the mountains of Salt Lake City with the hole in the cockpit. This is not that movie. This is reality. So it's bizarre to me that we've gotten to the point where we have, first of all, mental illness is much more widespread now, known widespread, because they've made so many more mental illnesses. They've learned to categorize you and box you up in all these different categories. So now people are more aware of it, and they talk about it more, and they react to it more, and they're more sensitive to it. I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't talk about bipolar people, but now you have teenagers that, if somebody just gets mad, they're like, oh my God, you're bipolar. I gotta get out of here. I can't deal with you. Or, you have people on social media saying no bipolars. Like every bipolar person is just like this, horrible, demon or satanic creature. It's ridiculous. We're not those people. You can get like that. You can get angry, but it doesn't last forever. And when the chemicals flush out of your system, you're back to normal. It's just part of the entertainment that's kind of built in. It's like, I look at my mental illnesses kind of like built-in entertainment, because if I don't, then I just get frustrated and upset. And why live your life frustrated and upset? So you might as well make the best out of the situation you're put in. But my point is, these things are hard. There's no easy answers. You have financial questions, you have safety questions, you have all these kind of questions, but there is, excuse me, I'll call you right back. Right back. Sorry. But there's all these questions that people have, and they need answers. If there's if mental illness was treated seriously by the world, as opposed to just kind of shoved in the background, or shoved in the closet, or shoved in the attic, or shoved in the insane asylum, or shoved in the hospital, or medicated and just shoved in bed, if people would learn that there's a lot of mental illness out there, even supposedly the sane people, if you really drill down into sane people, you find out that there's really no such thing as sanity. Everybody's got their little quirks and their weirdnesses and their phobias and their ego and emotional issues and stuff like that. Those are all mental illnesses, supposedly. You can categorize those. So what is sanity? And then how are we going to deal with it effectively? That's what we need to do. That's what we need to figure out. We need to figure out how to deal with this in a rational way that is safe and effective for everyone, and everyone gets to keep some level of their dignity. Now, I realize there are some extreme cases of mental illness, and I read about one today where a guy robbed a bank, and then he was on trial, and he decided to eat his own feces during this trial because the Virgin Mary told him to. Obviously, he's not stable. Obviously, there's a chemical imbalance somewhere in his brain, and he needs to be put on the proper medication to fix that, because he's in he's having a psychosis, and he is completely detached. Or he could just be brilliant, and who's to say? That's the thing. We never know. Because if you think mentally ill people are stupid, they're not. They're really not. Not all of them. Some of them are. Like everybody. Some people are stupid, and some people aren't. But some people are mentally ill, and does not mean they're stupid. That's my point. So with that in mind, when you look at these stories in the news all the time about the crazy person shot this, the crazy person did this, the crazy person did that, don't think they're always stupid. Sometimes they'll call them crazy, and they're just stupid people. Like leaving their guns out for their little children to play with, and their little children shoot each other and stuff like that. That's not a mentally ill person. That's a stupid person. But yet in the news, they'll call it mentally ill. There's a huge difference between the two. And it'll bite you in the ass every time you treat a smart mentally ill person like they're an idiot. Because they'll bite you in the ass. They'll screw with you. Because once you're crazy, society treats you horribly. So you have nothing to lose. So you can just screw with people all day long. Why not? They're screwing with you. They're treating you like you're stupid. Or they're acting like they're going to catch it. Now, how do you catch schizophrenia? You can't. Not even with a blood transfusion. It's ridiculous. But people treat us like that. And then you wonder why we screw with you. Well, because we can. Because you treat us horribly. So think about it. Lighten up a little bit. Open your eyes. And think about your actions and think about your words, because they matter. And it matters to all of us. Like to the 150 people on that plane. It matters to everyone. And it matters to companies and the economy. Because now you have a crazy pilot who's not stupid suing his employer because they didn't do their job to keep people safe, including him, the employee. You have to keep your employees safe too. Think about it. Talk to you later.